few years ago now, I remember calling round to a friend's house to take her something. As I approached the front door, I could hear my friend yelling at her teenage daughter, telling her that she couldn't go out until she'd tidied her room. Oh my goodness, the air was blue. I'd never heard my friend so angry, and I was hesitant about ringing the doorbell. However, when she came to open the door, Ellen had a beautiful smile on her face and in her most gracious manner said, "Oh, hello, Jane. It's nice to see you. Come in. Leanne and I were just going to have a coffee. Would you like one?" Busted. Honestly, Leanne had never looked so relieved to see me. You see, my being there automatically challenged Ellen's behaviour. Not that she was wrong. Leanne's room probably was a mess and needed to be tidied. But Ellen softened her attitude when someone else was present. And that's something that we all do from time to time, depending on the company. You see, simply by being alongside others, we're brought to a point where we think about what we're doing, what we say, even if it is because we worry about what the next person thinks about us. It causes us to examine ourselves. Now, sometimes it's that other person that actually brings out the worst in us rather than the best. So you could say it works both ways. And it's true. That's why community is so important, especially when it's an imperfect community made up of people like me and maybe like you too, each with our own needs and limitations and quirkiness. You know, the kind that sometimes irritates one another or causes us to become impatient or frustrated, or which challenges us, even which sometimes confronts us. You see, it's often in community that God does some of his most beautiful work in us. God uses the people that he places around us as a tool to prune us. Think about it. You'll recall, if you've been following this series, that we've been looking at the idea of pruning, or rather of us being pruned by God, the divine gardener. We focused on one particular verse found in John 15 and verse 2. So if you haven't read it yet, then pause the video and go and read it. John chapter 15, and I'm going to read from verse 1. "I am the true vine," said Jesus, "and my Father is the gardener. He cuts off every branch in me that bears no fruit, while every branch that does bear fruit, he prunes so that it will become even more fruitful." This idea of our lives being pruned, it's not the most comfortable thought, is it? But God isn't reckless. Rather, he is selective, focused, careful in his pruning, and each tool that he uses is specifically selected to make us stronger. Although it most likely will hurt at times, that's not the intention. Remember, God's purpose is to deepen our relationship with him and with others, and to help us to become more like him. He wants us to live out those characteristics in our families and communities, that others may come to know him too. So how does he do it? What tools does he use? Well, put it this way, he doesn't necessarily use a chainsaw. He's more likely to be strategic, careful, intentional. Last week I suggested that one of the tools he uses is the Bible, the Word of God. Living and active, sharper than any two-edged sword. The Bible has the ability to cut with precision, to expose the true condition of our hearts as we read it and immerse ourselves in it. This week I want us to look at the way in which God uses other people that He's placed around us in order to prune us. Those other people become the means, even if they don't know it, the tool that God uses. After all, it's easy enough to be saintly when there's no one around to irritate us. I can feel very saintly living here at home on my own where there's no one but the cat to irritate me. But the moment other people are around, then there's every excuse to rant and rave the moment we have an audience. And that's why this message this week is so important for all of us. We actually need each other to help us to grow. Have you ever thought how God might have placed certain people in your life as a gift to make you holy? Think of that person, I don't know, as a fruit tester, put there by God to make sure that we're producing the right kind of fruit. As they press our buttons or wind us up, what fruit do we bear? You know the answer to that, and so do I. The true condition of our hearts is exposed. What's in our hearts spills out. And that's one of the reasons why belonging to a church is so important. God uses the church as a community of change, a means of grace. It's the place, in normal circumstances, where we can remind each other of the truth. We can read and study and understand the Bible together. We can pray together and model holiness to one another, where we can serve together, provide accountability, worship God together. No wonder we miss it so much. But church is also the place where we can irritate the life out of one another, in love, of course. Imagine it like this, as a big bowl of fruit salad. Each of us with different personalities. Some of us strong-willed, others meek and mild, each with different backgrounds, priorities, levels of maturity. And He asks us to commit to one another, to abide together, to remain together in order that we can grow together. That's church. A community of imperfect people thrown together for the purposes of God, that we might reveal Christ's glory. We have to learn to listen, to tolerate one another, to care for one another, to overcome prejudices, to shift the focus from ourselves to others. Unless we're called to be a hermit, and I doubt that any of us have been, we're called to live in community with others, because we need others in order to help us bear fruit. Even the analogy of the vine is helpful, as it has different branches, different parts, each testing the strength of one another. We are joined together for a reason. It enables us to speak the truth to one another in love. How many of us have someone in our lives who loves us enough to tell us the truth, even when it's painful? This being joined together with our roots going down deep into Christ encourages us to be interdependent, to build integrity, wholeness, into our relationships with others, and to learn together that there's a right and a wrong time, and a right and a wrong way to challenge one another. We need one another. And God uses each of us to do his work of pruning in our lives. The church where you worship, and I know it's difficult at the minute, we all feel a little disconnected. And it's important that we still try to engage, even though it's difficult. That church is not a random collection of people. God has given us each other to help us to grow, even if we have to do it virtually at the moment. Yes, people will wind us up. We will wind others up too. That's natural because we're all different. But that's how he prunes us. Listen to this. It's from a book written by Tim Chester, You Can Change. He writes this: God is using the different people, the contrasting personalities in your church to change your heart. He's using the difficult people, the annoying people, the sinful people. He's placed you together so that you can rub off each other's rough edges. It's as if God has put us like rocks into a bag and is shaking us about so that we collide with one another. Sometimes sparks fly, but gradually we become beautiful, smooth gemstones. Remember, he writes, remember next time someone is rubbing you up the wrong way, that God is smoothing you down. God has given you that person in his love as a gift to make you holy. That's why we need each other. And that's why we must remain connected together to the vine. Let me ask you this. What's stopping you from bearing fruit right now? And who is God giving you to help with that? These days of lockdown and restrictions are so difficult for us. And they show us just how important it is for us to be connected. I'm really missing that. You know, we're going to have to work really hard at that when we go forward. There might need to be some pruning. Things won't necessarily look the same. But one thing's for sure. We will need one another. And we will need to stay connected to God. If a person remains in me and I in them, Jesus says in John's Gospel, they will bear much fruit. Apart from me, they can do nothing. As you switch off this video now, just pause and thank God for the people he has given you in your life, even those who irritate you. And ask God to use them to help you to grow to be more like him.